So for all of the effort that we make to pray, to go to Mass and participate well, to live a good Catholic life and sanctify ourselves, we can ask, am I actually growing in virtue? And am I actually rooting sin out of my life? If our answer is no, or I'm not really sure, then maybe we're lacking a concrete enough approach to growing in our spiritual life. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. A means, a concrete method that many of the saints have used for growing in the spiritual life. And it's called the particular examination of conscience. So the content that I'm drawing from for this video series comes from this book called The Particular Examination of Conscience and the Dominant Defect by Father Miguel Fuentes. So here we go. What is the particular examination of conscience? It's an exercise you do 3 times a day for about 3 to 5 minutes each time. What does it do? It focuses your energy onto one specific point of your character that you want to work on. And this focus allows your will to more easily make the actions, the concrete actions that you need to make in order to make progress. Okay, but how do I specifically carry this out during my day? Well, the first of the 3 moments is in the morning when you wake up. And that's when you bring to mind the specific thing that you're going to work on that day. So for example, today I'm going to avoid occasions of gluttony, of eating too much. That means I'm not going to go anywhere near the fridge unless it's a mealtime. So that's an act of awareness that sets us up with a purpose. And if you find that difficult to do, you can even write down a prayer in simple words that you read each morning when you get up. So the second moment is in the middle of the day, perhaps after lunch. And I think this one should take about 5 minutes of your time. So here you stop and you look at how the morning went. You say, how many times did I fail in the resolution that I made? And how many times was I successful? And you take these numbers and you record them in a little booklet. So here's an example notebook. And here is an example page of the format that I use. On the page above, I write out the goal in good detail that I'm going to be working on, whether it's a particular sin or whether it's a particular good work, virtue that I want to foster. And on the page below, you'll see a space for each day of the week. There are 2 little sections for check marks or tick marks. And I use the check mark to show, okay, this part of the day went well. But a tick means, okay, that's one time that I failed. But more than simply recording a number, it's important to stop and try to understand why the falls happened, and also why the successes happened. And I record that information too, briefly, right here. After this, you renew your resolution and you continue for the rest of the day. So the third moment is at the end of the day, and it's basically a repetition of the second moment. Only here, you not only look at how the afternoon went, you also compare how the afternoon went to the morning. And then when you reach the end of the week, you compare each day to see whether you're getting better or whether you're not. So this whole thing is about consistency. It's like learning a language or an instrument. If you think you're going to get those down by practicing for an hour a week, you're wrong. And it's also about understanding. If you think you're going to be able to play the flute really well, or you're going to be a great running back, but you don't know the fundamentals, you don't know music theory, you don't know tactics, you're wrong again. And really, it's about making this goal seem possible, because when our emotions are up and we're just beginning, we're like, yes, this is going to be awesome. I am going to do this. But then a week later, it's starting to annoy us, this work on ourselves. We've already messed up a couple times. We've got a lot of other stuff on our mind. And okay, fast forward another 2 weeks, and we're not even trying anymore because we quietly gave up. Maybe deep down at the beginning, there was a part of us that was not on board because it wasn't fully convinced that this was actually possible for us. Now, I've already said this a few times, but I'm going to stress it here. The matter for your examination has to be specific, and you have to understand it well. For example, you shouldn't say, oh, I struggle with my temper. I get angry really easily. So my particular exam is going to be not getting angry. That's way too broad. A better example would be, in order to combat my tendency to get angry, I know that one of the main places that happens is with my coworker, Dan. So before every meeting with Dan, I'm going to make sure that I make an act of humility and then strive to keep calm. This is good because it takes into account a concrete act, my act of humility, and then my subsequent actions toward Dan. It also takes into account a very specific time of the day, my meeting with Dan. Finally, it has a very specific object, in this case, my coworker Dan. So it's super specific all around. So this means I'm not going to get to my lunch break or to the end of the day and sit down and be like, how did anger enter into my day today? And 5 minutes go by and I'm, still sort of in this abstract consideration and I haven't figured anything out. No. With this matter, I pretty much immediately know whether I saw Dan today and whether I made that act of humility and how I acted towards him. Okay, but what matter? What thing should you select for your examination of conscience? Father Fuentes recommends that you start with your biggest vice that you struggle with. But that in itself requires self-knowledge, and acquiring that kind of knowledge of self is a big topic. It's actually what the second part of the book is devoted to, and I'm going to cover that in the second video. But right off the bat, it needs to be understood. Before you can effectively use the particular examination of conscience, you need to have sufficiently reflected on your character, your strengths, your defects, your habitual sins, so that you can correctly identify the specific area that you should work on. So we've talked about the concrete practice of the exam and how to select matter for the exam and how that needs to be detailed. And I'll make one final point now, which is about having the right spirit or the right approach to the exam. Because if we're not careful, this can become a sterile or a sort of exterior exercise, or we can just abandon this altogether because we don't fully use it in the right way. So once again, this spirit that we approach it in is very important. So Father Ignacio Casanovas described this spirit very well. He said, "It's a general disposition in man that makes him always and intensely interested in knowing and discerning and perfecting the reactions produced in his soul whenever they arise." So getting better has to become something that we're invested in, something that interests us. And I think if we see it as a means to more conscientiously live each moment of our day, like with intentionality, rather than just sort of going through moment to moment, potentially like a zombie as we get tired, this can become something exciting, a real challenge to live well. Above all, the exam seeks to keep the spirit active and awake at all moments of the day, and always directed toward the good. So that's an introduction to one of the greatest saint-tested methods for improving in the spiritual life. And I've hit a few of the concrete points from this book, the particular examination of conscience and the dominant defect. But if you want to see these topics in more detail and read a lot more good advice for carrying out the exam, I highly recommend that you actually check out the full book, which a link to that is below, where you can find that on Amazon. And feel free to check out the next episode of the series, where I'll cover more on the dominant defect, which is going to help you discern where your primary struggles are, and thus really where you should focus your own particular examination in. So if you enjoy this sort of content, feel free to like and subscribe, and leave us a comment below. We'll answer any questions that you have. We'd love to know what you think. Definitely stay tuned for more videos in this series, as we make more videos about the books and the virtue series. May Saint Ignatius of Loyola intercede for us, and may Mary's motherly prayers carry us forward in the work. God bless you.